We protected the United Kingdom all through the Cold War. I'm proud of that. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
What if a royal visit meant to celebrate friendship actually exposed how fragile that friendship has become? In this striking Senate floor speech, John Kennedy begins by praising King Charles with warmth and respect, but within moments, the tone turns sharp, unsettling, and deeply revealing. What starts as a tribute becomes a warning that Britain's political leadership has weakened its military, delayed serious defense spending, and may be gambling with one of the West's most important strategic alliances. And then comes the deeper fear beneath the rhetoric, that behind the pageantry, behind the smiles, behind the language of tradition, the so-called special relationship may be entering a dangerous new phase the public still doesn't fully see.
Let me say a word about King Charles. King Charles spoke to a joint session of Congress today. I thank him so much for coming. He was eloquent. He was charming. He was funny. He talked about the special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. And we do have a special relationship, and I hope it can continue. And I want to come back to the King's visit. In preparation for the King's visit and the King's speech, I read an article in particular in The Economist magazine. I read The Economist magazine anyway every week. In my opinion, I've read it cover to cover. It's really, some call it a newspaper, but it really is a magazine. I've read it cover to cover for 25 years. It covers the world. I've always enjoyed the reporting because it's very in-depth, it's very factual. Just about every author of every article offers his or her opinion, but it's subtle and it's nuanced, and usually they offer their opinion after presenting both sides of the story. It hurts me to say, disappoints me to say, that in the past year, the Economist has really changed. Their reporting has crossed the line, in my opinion. They are so angry at the president and angry at America that it has seeped into their reporting, and I really regret that. I'm going to keep reading them, but I really regret that they've given in to their repetitive desires and lost some of their objectivity. And the article in particular that I read it on the plane. I don't remember whether I was going home or coming up. But the article that I read in preparation for King Charles's visit was entitled, "Britain Rethinks Its Special Relationship with America." Britain rethinks its special relationship with America. And this was the question that The Economist was asking. Should Britain, the United Kingdom, with which we do have a special relationship, should the United Kingdom keep hugging America or embrace Europe? Like it was a buffet, like they have a choice. And in the article, it startled me. The article also points out, and this also surprised me, disappointed me, that the author of the article pointed it out almost gleefully, that today, when you poll the American people and ask them if they approve of Britain, 76% of Americans approve. When you ask our friends in Britain if they approve of America, only 34% do. That one surprised me. I want to set the record straight that regardless of what the polls show, America does have a special relationship with the United Kingdom. And it's an important relationship. And that's why the American people spilled their blood and spent their treasure in 1917 to protect the British Empire. That's why the American people spent their treasure and spilled their blood in 1941 in World War II to protect the British Empire, which would not have won without America's help. After World War II, Great Britain, it was horrible. They were devastated. Flat on their back, broke. America, still, they were our friends, special friends. America lifted them up, bankrolled their reconstruction. We went in, loaned them money, helped them get back on their feet. And then shortly after World War II, we, of course, discovered that we meaning the United Kingdom and the United States, had a new enemy in the Soviet Union. We protected the United Kingdom all through the Cold War. I'm proud of that. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. In fact, if you look at the numbers today, we still protect the United Kingdom and NATO and our friends in Europe. If you look at the money, I know there's been a lot of rhetoric about our allies in Europe are going to do better and spend more money on their own defense, but the numbers are the numbers. The American taxpayer still puts up 60% of total NATO defense spending today. We put up $845 billion a year to protect our cousins in the United Kingdom and in Europe. I support NATO. I support continuing to do that. And so I agree with King Charles. We do have a special relationship, and we should nurture it, and we should make it better. But friends tell friends the truth. And to my friends in the United Kingdom, as we try to appreciate and reset our relationship, I would say to them gently and respectfully, the world's changed. You have to pay your own bills for a while. This isn't the fault of the good people of the United Kingdom. This is the fault of their political leadership. It's especially true of their current political leadership. But they have castrated their military. They're weak as rainwater. This hasn't happened in a week or a day or a month. It's happened over a long period of time. I remember when Great Britain ruled the seas. Now, when Iran fires a missile at their base in Cyprus, they can barely find one ship to send down there, and that ship barely made it. The political leadership in the United Kingdom is, I've watched it hollow out its industrial base. I've watched the political leadership in the United Kingdom spend all of their money on welfare. And you know what? It's their money. That's none of my business. If that's what they want to do in a democracy, Godspeed. But they've depended on the American taxpayer to defend them. And the political leadership, again, I say this gently, I don't want to do anything to take away from the King's speech. I say this gently and respectfully. It's time for the political leadership in the United Kingdom to embrace adulthood. And it's time for them and time for them to start spending money on the military. Now, I know the Prime Minister said we're going to do better, and he and some of our other allies in Europe are talking about now spending 3.5% of their GDP on defense and another 1.5% on infrastructure in support of defense. It's a lot of talk so far. Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, published his plan for the military and military spending. I actually read it. I thought this part was special. Yeah, he's going to start spending more money, but it's back-end loaded. It's not going to happen. They're not going to really spend any serious money until 2030, and I can assure you that Sir Keir will not be around as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in September or October or January of 2030. He's struggling now. His poll numbers, probably shouldn't say this, but it's true. He's polling right up there with gonorrhea in terms of popularity. It's just a fact. So I do celebrate the special relationship that we have. And I do want us to be closer. But the political leadership in the United Kingdom has got to do its part. This is supposed to be a partnership. My final comment, the King, I think, is here the rest of the day, the King and the Queen. And of course, even though it was a beautiful speech that King Charles gave, the real heavy lifting is done, as we all know, in private. The King is going to meet privately with President Trump, and they're going to talk about the world, and they're going to get down to the specifics of things we can do to help each other. And I don't know what the King is going to talk to the President about. I don't know if he's carrying messages from the political leadership in the United Kingdom. That's all above my pay grade. But if the King is carrying a message from the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to try to convince our President to give away the Diego Garcia military base to an African country, which is the BFF of China, I hope our President will continue to resist. I hope he will respond to that request if it's made by saying the short answer is hell no. The short answer is no. The long answer is hell no. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, as you know, Mr. President, we have the Chagos Islands are owned by the United Kingdom. They're in the Indian Ocean. On one of the islands, we built a military base with the United Kingdom called Diego Garcia. And it's a really important military base for both countries. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has decided, because the United Nations has made him feel guilty about Britain's colonial past, the United Nations has told Prime Minister Starmer that he's got to give away this military base to the African country of Mauritius, even though Mauritius has never owned Diego Garcia or the Chagos Islands. They have no connection with it, none whatsoever. But because the Prime Minister has this white guilt because the United Kingdom and the good people of Great Britain once controlled other countries, they're supposed to feel guilty and give away our military base and their military base to Mauritius, who will promptly turn the keys over to China. It's one of the, I think I described it one time as bone deep, down to the marrow, stupid, and it is. And eventually, the Prime Minister talked the President into it, and then President Trump came, as he always does, he thought it through, and he said, no, I'm not doing that. And so they're still sawing on him and working on him, and I don't know if the King's going to bring it up And certainly it's the king's right if it does, but I hope the president will stand firm and let's not give away this military base to China.
In the end, what makes this speech so compelling is not just that John Kennedy attacks Keir Starmer or throws out a line designed to grab headlines. It is that the speech reveals how quickly diplomacy can shift from ceremony to suspicion. He begins with admiration for King Charles, almost inviting the audience into a familiar story about shared history, common values, and the emotional symbolism of the US-UK alliance. But step by step, the speech turns into something much darker, an argument that Britain's political class has grown comfortable relying on American protection, while allowing its own military strength and industrial seriousness to weaken. That is what gives the speech its documentary tension. It is not simply a roast, it is a warning disguised as political theater. Kennedy is trying to tell viewers that alliances do not survive on memory alone. They survive on capability, sacrifice, and the belief that both sides still carry real weight when the stakes rise. And that is where the speech becomes more than a Senate soundbite. Because once Kennedy moves from nostalgia into burden sharing, the deeper question emerges. What happens when one ally starts to believe the other is living off reputation rather than readiness? He frames the United States as the nation still carrying the heavier load, still paying the strategic bill, still underwriting the stability that protects Europe and Britain. Whether viewers agree with every detail or not, the emotional force of the speech comes from that feeling of imbalance. The sense that the old language of partnership may now be hiding a new language of frustration. In this framing, the real story is not only about Britain. It is about the future of Western alliances in an age where patience is thinner, threats are more global, and symbolic friendship no longer feels like enough. Then the speech sharpens even further. Kennedy turns from defense spending into political credibility, and from credibility into vulnerability. His criticism of Starmer is not presented as a policy disagreement alone. It is framed as evidence of a leadership class that talks about seriousness while postponing serious action. That is why the timing matters in the narration. A documentary-style commentary should not rush this point. It should let the audience feel the contrast. A royal visit projecting continuity on the surface, while underneath, elected officials are openly questioning whether the alliance still rests on equal commitment. That contrast is powerful because it turns the whole video into a study of appearances versus reality. The ceremony says stability. The speech says strain. The tradition says continuity. The rhetoric says mistrust is growing. And then comes the most strategically charged part of all, Diego Garcia. This is the moment where the clip stops being merely political and starts feeling geopolitical. Kennedy raises the base not as a side note, but as a symbol of what could be lost if political hesitation, international pressure, or diplomatic miscalculation overtakes strategic clarity. In storytelling terms, this is where the stakes widen dramatically. The viewer is no longer just listening to a senator criticize a foreign government. The viewer is being invited to see an arc that stretches from a royal visit in Washington to the Indian Ocean, from Senate rhetoric to the balance of power with China, from historical alliance to future vulnerability. That is exactly the kind of escalation that keeps audience retention high, because the story keeps expanding. It starts with one man speaking on the Senate floor, but it ends with a question about who controls the strategic future of the West. What makes this kind of video work especially well is that it carries two energies at once. On one level, it has the immediate click value people expect, a blunt senator, a viral insult, a line built for reaction. But on another level, it carries something stronger and more durable, the feeling that you are watching a moment that reveals a larger truth. The best commentary should lean into that second layer. It should tell the audience that this is not just about who mocked whom. It is about whether old alliances are being tested by new realities, budget fatigue, political fragmentation, military hesitation, and the rise of China as the ever-present strategic horizon behind so many Western decisions. In other words, the real hook is not the joke. The real hook is the fracture underneath it. And that is why the outro should not end with anger alone. It should end with unease. Because if Kennedy is right, then this was not just a tough speech. It was a glimpse into a future where alliances become more conditional, more transactional, and more openly questioned in public. If he is wrong, then this clip still tells us something important, that modern politics increasingly turns diplomacy into spectacle, and spectacle into perceived truth. Either way, the audience is left with a bigger question than the one they started with. Was this just vintage John Kennedy political theater? Or was it a rare, unscripted admission that one of the West's most famous partnerships is under more strain than leaders want to admit? That is the question that lingers after the clip ends, and that is the reason viewers stay. If tradition can no longer hide the tension, then what we are seeing here may not be a passing controversy at all, but the early language of a changing world order.